Well, hi, Jennifer. Thanks for meeting with me today. We are so excited about your upcoming course, Diffusing Anger, Anxiety, and Aggression to Improve Student Behavior. Can you start off and tell me a little bit of the background and kind of what's behind this session?
Sure, absolutely. I am a counselor educator and licensed professional counselor, as well as an educator. I've been a school counselor and administrator, and now I'm currently a consultant with Rogers Training Solutions. And I work with people who are trying to use interventions to help kids in their schools and districts in a meaningful way. And the session that we're talking about today is really meaningful because these are some of the things that educators struggle with a lot. Some of the anger behaviors, the anxiety, we're hearing so much more about anxiety now, and also aggression, which could follow into some bullying things. So this session is really about introducing those concepts, understanding the differences, and sometimes the overlapping things that happen between them, and then moving forward to help educators with some solutions around how to understand and bring about change for some of those students.
Sure. That sounds great. So how does this session help educators, address the mental health needs of anxiety, anger, aggression in youth?
Yeah, so as many times, I always want to start out with the educator themselves, their own perceptions and their own skills and abilities. So in our day, we usually start with understanding the teacher's perspectives, some of the behaviors that they're seeing in the classrooms now, and really begin a dialogue as to what are their experiences and what is happening for them that they can start building solutions around.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go right into defining anger, anxiety, and aggression, and learning more about, because what we know about anger, it's a natural emotion. We all have it, and it can be healthy. But how is it demonstrating itself in schools, and how are we able to cope with it? And anxiety is being seen as one of the most prevalent disorders in students today, and it's causing a lot of things like separation anxiety and general anxiety disorder and things of that nature that we haven't really seen up to a few years ago. And with what is happening in the world now, I am concerned that we will see more of that as well. And then aggression, there's 3 types of aggression: physical, verbal, and social, and kind of just break those down and learn more about what that means. Then we go right into evidence-based practice, what that means for us, and how we're looking toward always finding solutions that have some basis in research and evidence. And this is where we begin speaking about the multi-tiered systems of support. Many schools and districts are using this framework in order to look at the way in which interventions are used in their buildings. And we use this in this context to show them what things would be universal, what things would consider tier 2, and what things would be considered tier 3. So students who are receiving tier 3 should also be potentially receiving tier 2 and tier 1, but how are we graduating those skills and those interventions to really wrap around and support the students? So we talk a lot about that. And then we go into tier 1 prevention, talking about behavioral preventions, protective factors, and developmental assets. Based on my experience and the research that I've done, and then my experience in schools, I review 5 critical components to proactive teaching. They are determining triggers and discovering how emotions are contagious, understanding context of your school community, examining your expectations for your school, students, and yourself, investing in relationships, and practicing self-care and self-compassion. So we do all of this stuff, and then we end up with adding to your toolbox, what does tier 2 look like? How do we go through a problem-solving process that we can move students into receiving more interventions if they need them? So that's all the first part of the morning, and then we go right into strategies after lunch, which I think is really helpful for a lot of people. I offer 36 strategies around anger control issues, and we break that down into matching behaviors to interventions. That's something that I really try to stress in this, is that we have to be really informed about the whys and the hows and the wheres of what is happening to pick an intervention that will best match those students. And I offer that we go through a few of them, and we decide as a collective what sort of interventions we want to take a deep dive on, and we move through those. Then we have the intervention plan. Now we've chosen an intervention based on what we know about the students. What does the plan look like? How do we move forward? And then I talk a little bit at the end about what tier 3 looks like, and what, especially as a teacher's responsibility might be, as opposed to some other roles. And then moving on to mental health diagnosis. So just an introductory piece on some things that can, some mental health diagnoses that their students could have, and then a potential effective treatment. So I really try to walk the educators through the adult skill building, the tier 1, the tier 2, and the tier 3 pieces, so they have a real idea of, okay, when we're talking about anger, anxiety, and aggression, where does it fit in the tiers, and how can I, as an educator, understand that better and offer students some really helpful interventions.
Yeah, no, that absolutely sounds like something the educators can receive a full toolbox of resources, and kind of building that from the ground up. Sounds incredibly helpful. And you've done this seminar before. So what have educators said that they have, found to be helpful in the course?
Well, I just happen to have something right here. So I love to take feedback. Feedback is one of my takeaways that I often ask other educators to do. And so I asked them what they found helpful in the presentation. And they said things like insight into what contributes to students' anger, anxiety, and aggression. This one says, wow, I think you've given me some very important reminders. I'm excited with moving into a behaviorist teacher next year in my 19th year. This presentation has given me so many things to think about. Very informative and good review of ideas. The identification of triggers and the breakdown of when they occur, with whom, my reaction/action, etc. And keeping a journal documenting each student trigger and coping skill was something that they found useful. And one more, discussing how this topic can relate to class and distance learning. I tried to infuse how some of these interventions could be used in a distance learning format, respecting that this is something that many of our educators are going to have to deal with next year and in many years in the future.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the practicality of that, I think, will be incredibly helpful. Well, we're really excited about the course and think that educators will be able to benefit immensely from attending. So thank you for kind of deep diving or giving us a little hint of what we could potentially be seeing at your seminar. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me.